Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. Let's not have any politics questions. I know what's going on in the UK. Let's moan about England instead. Excuse me. Before I get into the questions, I normally would do a Patreon sale at the end, but forgive me, I'm going to do a quick one at the start. So you might have heard me say that we're doing July free for all of our paid members. Every bit of content, whether it's advanced tier content, the extra video content like Talking Tactics, Nico's Corner, the Twitter stories, anything we do on there as advanced is going to go to all of the patrons at any tier level. All of the podcasts will be available to any tier patron. What it essentially means is if you subscribe today and sign up as a new patron, you can join at basic tier and you will have the content. Everything that goes on Patreon in July will be available to you for £3 a month. I mention that now as a bit of a push because unknown to me, what we need to do is pause the payments so Patreon doesn't charge any of our patrons. We found out this morning that to do so, Patreon's actually going to stop us from allowing any new patrons to join. So if you want access to the content on Patreon in July, please sign up by the end of tomorrow on Saturday, June the 29th. And then we'll be freezing the payment subscription on Sunday the 30th so no one is charged for the month afterwards. Every bit of content that goes on Patreon will be available to all patrons, irrespective of the tier level that they're on. So if you want to support us on Patreon, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. My DMs are open on Twitter if anyone has any questions. But as said, everything available from even basic tier throughout July. I will give it the caveat that I'm going to take at least a week off towards the end of the month. But you're going to have circa at least sort of 15 podcasts in there and similar amount of additional advanced tier video content as well. That's the sales pitch. Let's get into the questions. Daniel Cullerton says, hi mate, if you could pick one past England player to put into this current England team, who would it be and why? Wow. What a good question. That's thrown me right off guard. Tempted to think the weak spots in the team are probably defensively, but then defensively we look pretty sound at the moment. And I'm drawn to think about someone to play alongside Declan Rice who could progress the ball up the pitch better for us. And then you're drawn to think about players, you know, the golden generation. They're all sort of attacking midfielders, aren't they? Let's not do the Gerrard Scholes, Lampard debate again. And as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about it. You know, I think it'd be ideal for this England team. Michael Carrick. That's a name I've got in my head. Would be a great addition in this England team to allow Declan Rice to better do the things that he does for Arsenal and progress us up the pitch better. Michael Carrick would be brilliant in this England team. And that's really weird because he obviously wasn't even a regular for England. But that feels like the right profile of fit to say, yeah, that would help us massively. I mean, I could say Rooney's and Gascoigne's and things like that. This team doesn't necessarily need that. Would it be improved by a 2004 Rooney or a 1990 Gascoigne? Yes, of course. But I feel like it's a progressive midfield player. And England haven't produced many deep-lying midfield players who've been able to progress the ball and pass vertically through lines. Michael Carrick is the strange answer to that question I'm going to give you, Daniel. Thank you. Francis Logan says, are we FPL? Oh, not FPL. We're really doing FPL. Listen, FPL Towers, just leave it be till England are out, at least. Seriously. Francis says, are we FPL players better off picking players that aren't in the Champions League with so many fixtures? Okay. Depends what sort of fixtures they've got, but I wouldn't read too much into that. What you got to consider as well is the competition isn't going to have a huge amount of jeopardy. I'll give you an example. So Arsenal playing Tottenham in game week 4, right? And I'm pretty sure from memory they've got Manchester City in game week 5. Actually going to pull my fixture ticker up, which is something else you can access on my planner via Patreon as well. They've got Manchester City in game week 5, but it's Champions League fixtures in between that. Now, Arsenal are obviously going to play 8 Champions League fixtures. The jeopardy is not as big as a 14 group, and if they've got someone that's not the strongest opponent in that set of fixtures between 4 and 5, they may well rotate a little bit. So I wouldn't read too much into that at this stage personally. I think I'd be cautious certainly on Villa, who do have a really good set of fixtures actually between game weeks 3 and 9 basically. A really good run once they've got past Arsenal in game week 2. That I'd be cautious of the impact on them of playing Champions League football. For City, wouldn't worry about it too much. For Arsenal, wouldn't worry about it too much. And Liverpool as well. Liverpool's fixtures are too good to be thinking, I'm not going to pick them because they've got Champions League after game week 4. No, the fixtures are too good at the start to ignore that. So, largely to answer your question, Francis, I'd say no. JP says, your knockout predictions to the final, mate. Now, I'm not going to do all them because me and Nico did it on Patreon yesterday, and me and Clayton have also done a podcast tipping all around the 16 games this morning as well. We have to acknowledge that the draw has opened up for England. If England were going to be meeting any of Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, I certainly wouldn't sit here and say I think England will get to the final. And I don't particularly, but the logic is that whoever England play between now and a possible final, they will go in as favourites. That's not an English opinion. It's not even a bookmaker's opinion. That's an opto-analysis opinion. So, I mean, England really should make the final. There's nothing we've seen on the pitch that would suggest that England are going to do that. But the reality is the way that draw has opened up, and that's not to underestimate even Slovakia, never mind Italy or Switzerland or Austria or the Netherlands or even Romania or Turkey. But on that side of the draw, England will be favourites to reach the final. I think on what I've seen so far, I would tip Spain to win it now at this stage, if that's where I had to put my money. I think the big game for Spain will be the quarterfinal with Germany, if that's how it progresses, which if both teams win this weekend is obviously what it will be. I think that's going to be the big one for Spain. Historically, host nations will get to a semi-final or final, particularly big nations like a Germany. So I feel like Germany in the quarterfinal will be the real big challenge for Spain. And if they overcome that, then I think they'll go on and win this competition. JP says, what do you think of Chelsea buying Villa youngster for 19 million but selling Amari Hutchinson for 25 million? I mean, it's an incredible price for Amari Hutchinson if that's what it's going to be. I can't profess to have even seen him play. I've not watched a lot of Ipswich from last season. But I know Paul Allen, our new Ipswich correspondent, thinks highly of him and would obviously love to get him back. So that would be a good deal for Ipswich. But I mean, a sizable deal for Ipswich, of course, as well. But it's obviously a transfer they'd be prioritising. The thing is with players that are young like this, you'll get the resale value on them. That's part why these players cost more, is because they're young. And we obviously know what's happening at the moment. It's not the case with this specific Hutchinson transfer, but I think we can all read between the lines that there's a number of clubs that need to do some business between now and the end of Sunday to help with PSR. I don't hold any blame on the clubs for that because they've got to look after themselves and they're scratching each other's backs to do it. Does it feel like a lot of money? Yes, it does. On some of these youngsters coming through, I mean, let's do a different example. We knew about him, but when Chelsea paid 40 odd million for Cole Palmer last summer, the majority of us reacted and went, oh my God, that's a lot of money. What are you doing? Now, if Cole Palmer went back on the market now, what are we talking, towards 100? Are we? In comparison to some of these prices. So the value of players has gone through the roof. If you get one in at that sort of value and they prove to be the next Cole Palmer or something, you can afford the one or two that will certainly happen on this sort of strategy that are obviously going to be bad. So, I mean, Chelsea are being linked with every player that's pretty much under 24 that's half decent in world football, and let's not stop him. So my thoughts on it, I worry for some of these youngsters like Kellyman, who's going to go to Chelsea and what his involvement will be, but how much of his involvement would he have had at Villa this year? Unknown. And I also recognise that these guys have probably taken a huge jump in salaries, signing on fees, etc. So they're not completely losing out. It's not like their career is going to go down the pan. If it doesn't work out at Chelsea, you'll probably get moves elsewhere. I mean, in Chelsea's case, there's a lot of us looking again, how many players do you need, right? There's lots to talk about Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall this morning, potentially going to Chelsea from Leicester. And he would obviously fit in the Enzo Maresca system. He was probably key player for Leicester last year. But you do look at the players that Chelsea have on their books and ask, do you need that player? So Chelsea's a special case, as we know. JC says, hey mate, hope you're well. Currently on Mbappe, Gakpo and Lamine Yamal up front. Have the funds for Yamal to Kane. Or would you stick with for Spain like you mentioned on the differential show? Cheers. Yeah, I mean, I think that's first port of call actually would be get the 4 Spain players if you're playing Euro fantasy format. Get the 4 Spain players you want first and foremost, I think. With respect, they've got on paper the easiest tie. I think Georgia have shown themselves to be quite open. They may well threaten Spain at the other end, but I don't think any of us could realistically sit here and doubt that Spain would go through. So, I mean, particularly if you're on the one-game strategy and looking at, say, wild card in the quarter-final, then I think you definitely want for Spain, don't you? I could understand a little bit more caution. You go, oh, it could be Germany, then France en route to a final. I understand that. Certainly for me, who's got the wild card left, it's definitely for Spain. And as you know, I said on that, JC, I considered even going Morata and Yamal up front. I mean, I'll be going Morata personally myself. But if Yamal was a midfielder, he'd certainly be going in. Don't spend the money for the sake of spending the money. The draft, I said this morning, has currently got 3 million in the bank. I said on one of the podcasts with Clayton earlier this week that I didn't think finances were going to be too much of a problem. And that's how it's turned out. So, yeah, I would be prioritising the right Spain there, I think, mate. FPL Gas says, hello, mate. If you were chipless, how would you go about picking a team for the round of 16? I think probably the one real change for me is I'd gamble a bit more on Austria. It doesn't feel like a necessity that I need to take it. And I explained on that Patreon podcast this morning that there were some really good options there. You know, Pence at 4 million, I'd probably go with. I'd be more liable as well to take a chance on someone like Baumgartner. It doesn't really feel necessary. As I said, the funds aren't tight, so I don't need to drop to it. And as much as I feel like I'd certainly fancy Austria to beat Turkey, and they could well get to the final, it doesn't feel like I, on my strategy, need to take a chance there at the moment. When I've got Spain, Portugal, England, Germany, I'd argue France, and the Netherlands, all with outstanding fixtures and players that fit into the finances of that structure anyway. I think, yeah, if I didn't have the wild card left, and because of the side of the draw they're on, I'd be much keener to look at more Austria and probably more of the Netherlands as well. Stephen Manning says, James, how far do you think Rangnick's high energy and organised Austrian team will go at the Euros? I've been really impressed with them. Semi-finals for me. Yeah, as I just said, really could be. There's two sides to this. I think all of us have been impressed with them. It feels unusual to see, with respect, a less fancied side, particularly considering the group they were in. Managed to implement a high pressing system in a summer international tournament and do it well and win that group. I mean, I said pre-tournament that I thought they would probably be everybody's dark horses, but aren't being spoken about because of the group that they've landed in. Whereas 8 years ago, they were being spoken about as everybody's dark horses, partly because they were in a group that they were very well fancied to get out of, that included Iceland, who'd never been in a tournament before. Less of that. We did that on Patreon as well yesterday. And Hungary, who hadn't been in a tournament since the 80s, I think. And they finished bottom of that group and were really bad. So really good side. I think the caveat of that is to remove the joy that many of us have found watching them on the eye, and a balancing that to understanding the fixtures they've had, Their expected goal difference across the group stage is minus 1.5. It's one of the worst of the 16 teams that have qualified. France had good chance against them. Holland, admittedly, game state has a lot to do with that. Had a really good XG against them as well. Didn't keep a clean sheet against Poland. So if you beat that press, there are certainly vulnerabilities to them. I wonder if they were to make a semi-final, what it would be like for them if the experience would potentially get to them a little bit. I mean, that experience of getting over the line. But yeah, really nice to see a nation like that many of us spoke up pre-tournament, show what they're capable of. Really impressed. I would fully expect them to beat Turkey on Tuesday night, particularly with Kalkanoglu suspended. And if it's the Netherlands again in the quarterfinals, they'll know they can beat them. Ironically, that game will be in Berlin again, as was their group match. So setting-wise, opponent, everything, they'll feel quite comfortable. They even rotated a few players in the game against the Netherlands. So yeah, good side, very capable. They're capable of getting to the final, I think. I think it's difficult to envisage that they would beat one of the big powers if they got to the final. But sure, why not? Manchester United fans will probably disagree based on what they saw, but I think Ralf Rangnick knows what he's doing. Possibly, it speaks a lot about Manchester United. Me and Callum discussed this on Monday's podcast. What does it say about Manchester United on reflection and how he's been able to implement this with Austria? He's not been in charge. It's not like he's been in charge for years on end. They've implemented this well. They beat Turkey 6-1 in a friendly within the last year. So, I mean, I don't expect them to win by that score next Tuesday, but I would expect them to go through again. Might change now, though, because the psyche is there's an expectation. That brings difference. But Turkey feel like an ideal opponent because Turkey won't just sit off them and let them play and ask them to break them down. Turkey will go and play football. It's the only way they know, I think. Good team, though. Yeah, been enjoyable, Stephen. Jake says, hi, mate. Hope you're well. We'll be using my wild card in the quarters. Who do you fancy more for round of 16? Schlotterbeck or Bastoni? As a slight differential. Also, which Spain mid? Yeah, Schlotterbeck, I presume, will play with Jonathan Tah suspended. And also there's doubts around Antonio Rudiger as well. I would prefer that over Bastoni and the Italy route. Remember, Italy be without Calafiori, who's suspended as well. Spain mid, for me, comfortably would be Nico Williams. It's first choice for me of all the midfielders available. So Nico Williams. I think Clayton said this morning he's looking to go with Pedri as well. Yeah, Nico Williams is... In my current draft, Nico Williams is the only one that's an absolute definite for me is going in. So that's the one for me, mate. Joseph Robinson says, did you know, James, that not one single player has scored more than one single goal in any of the 36 single games so far in Euro 24? Yes, I did, mate. I mean, there's only a handful of players who've scored twice. So, yes, I did. And if you want more great trivia questions like that, we've got a quiz on Patreon available tonight as well, which if you support the show at www.patreon.com/planetfpl, you'll be able to listen to at 8 o'clock this evening. James Drury is in. My friend the Iceman says, James, which 15 players are going to score the most points in Euro Fantasy this match day? Also, does it disturb you as much as it does me that it is called match day when it's over more than one day? No, I'm used to it from UCL Fantasy, so no, not massively. I would arguably prefer match week. I try and use match week when I do the Sky pods because the game week numbers are different in FPL to Sky, so I try and use match week as a term in Sky Fantasy Football. No, it doesn't disturb me that much, James. I sleep fairly well at night. 15 players who are going to score the most points in Euros Fantasy this week. Unai Simon, Spain's back four if you can get it right. I suppose Carvajal, Cucurella are the two I'm likely to go with. Lenormand will play. I presume probably Laporte again. Williams, Jamal, Morata. I'm quite high on Spain doing pretty well on Sunday night. Daniel Cullerton says Liverpool look likely to sign Nori. And wow, that's the first I've heard of that rumour. Says, how do you think he will do if we get it over the line? And will he be an immediate replacement for Robertson, or will he get phased in? Very different profile of player. I know there's a few within the Tottenham community have wanted to look at Nori because he's shown the potential. I think back at the game they had with Sheffield United on the day Liverpool beat Chelsea in the Carabao Cup final, the ability to invert into midfield. So that would appeal. He's also a player you could play wide in the front three. We've seen that. That's why it became a really interesting fantasy asset sort of in the April period. So yeah, I can see that. It's got great ability potential. I think there's always been concerns about him defensively, but I think that side of his game's improving. I think he's gaining a self-awareness of his own ability and his understanding of the game. So yeah, I mean, if he ended up rocking up somewhere like Liverpool, it wouldn't hugely shock me. Does he automatically take over from Robertson? No, I think he'd get phased in. I mean, you'll even remember when Robertson joined the club, right? Didn't go straight in. It was a long time before he started playing regularly for Liverpool. But it's difficult to say, right? I can't say I've studied Arne Slot enough to know what he would want actually from his fullbacks at this stage. So I can't really answer that fairly at this stage. Rhino says, afternoon, mate. Bielsa doing a good job with Darwin Núñez and Uruguay. Can you see him in the Prem again, or was Leeds his one chance? Would he want to come back? I saw a piece of his press who was doing something with Rodrigo Bentancur, and I was having a laugh. Looked like he was enjoying himself, actually. Yeah, Núñez is scoring for fun for them, isn't it? They win 5-0 last night, I think. Hopefully for them, they do well in that tournament. Do I see Bielsa back in the Premier League? I think Leeds was very much right club, right time. And I think people, unfortunately, from a viewpoint of a results business, probably saw enough there to go, that's not going to be for me. Plus, unfortunately, he's obviously incredibly experienced, but his age probably doesn't appeal to too many. It's not the profile of manager. If you want an experienced manager, it's normally because you're in trouble. If you want to change the football philosophy, then you're doing that on a longer term vision. Do you look at Bielsa as a longer term vision? What I mean by that is, let's say West Ham hadn't appointed, and Lopetegui may well get them playing brilliant football. But if they wanted to get a Bielsa, De Zerbi ilk manager, for example, they probably don't choose Bielsa. It is, you can call it ageist, but it probably would go, right, who can be the next type? Where's the unknown De Zerbi, for example? You're probably more looking at that. And I could almost only see someone appoint him because they go almost firefighting, but I don't think you get that type of manager if you're firefighting, if that makes sense. So, look, I think Bielsa at Leeds was wonderful. I know like the fans there and the club and him will always have a connection and stuff. No, I probably wouldn't. I could only almost see it as almost like a real temporary fix for a club that wasn't in serious danger. I don't know, hypothetical here, if Brighton's new manager comes in and he suddenly gets poached within 6 months because he's incredible, and Brighton go, well, I want someone experienced, but I want a good brand of football for the last 3 months of the season. Like, I could see that sort of thing if someone like Bielsa was available. But no, I probably wouldn't see him coming back to the Premier League again. And I think, actually, having reflected on De Zerbi obviously leaving Brighton now, I'm not sure if De Zerbi will be back either, despite many of you will know how high I am on his ability. I still think he's destined to hit the top, but there's enough there with his mannerisms, his aura, his I don't want to say ability to get wound up. You could come across a bit touchy sometimes, that I think it put a few people off. And yes, Iceman, I'm always late, as Matthew Fairbrace has pointed out as well. For Greendale says, hi James, who is your team of the Euros so far, but only made up of players whose first names have an odd number of letters in it? I'd struggle enough to put together a decent 11 anyway. Odd number of letters in it. every player that just came into my head has got even number of letters. Does anybody really want me to record a bit of content and try and count in my head if someone's first name's got odd or even letters in it? No, I don't think anyone really wants me to do that, mate. Mamadashvili in goal, I think. Mikatwedzi up front. He's got going, hasn't he? 3 goals and assists for Georgia. Stick him in. I'm just trying to think of teams and who's really impressed now. Mark Cucurella at Spain, actually. Really good tournament so far in those first 2 games. Fabian Ruiz, massively stood out against Italy. Would go in. Jamal Musiala would go in. There's no one England. I mean, would you make a case for Mark Gay would be England one if you? I suppose if you had to make a genuine case, you'd make more case for some Slovakians actually. Ironically, I think Stanislav Lobotka, who plays the anchor role for them, is a really good player in midfield. Been impressive. I suppose Kante would be a contender, wouldn't he? Calafiori, Italy was really unlucky with the own goal against Spain, but I mean that impact on the equalising goal against Croatia, he'll be a miss for them tomorrow as well. It was a player I wasn't familiar with pre-tournament, who has stood out. There's a lot of Premier League clubs reportedly looking at him. So I have not counted, mate, if any of them have got odd or even letters in their first name. Adam Uachi, he's written Carrick. And I can see 1877 WWFC has also said Carrick 100% criminally underrated. Did that actually go down well, did it? Freddie Ebbing, I see, he's put a good shout. So this is to the earlier question on England player. Ashley Cole is a great shout, in fairness. Yeah, didn't even think about this obvious glaring left-back problem we have. Yeah, Ashley Cole's arguably the one genuine world-class player. Careful, I'll upset some people here. That was in the golden generation team by virtue of the fact if you were putting together a World 11 team, he would probably have been in it. Michael Scott says, are there any rules from Euro's fantasy game you would like to see in FPL? Are there any rules? I mean, I've mentioned the limitless chip a few times from Euro fantasy and stuff, that I think it's a very easy concept one as a chip that would go down well with the general masses, and why limit it even to the number of players per team? You have 7 Liverpool players that weekend for unlimited money. Have 7 if that's what you want to do, for example. So I think the limitless chip is a potential interesting idea. But in terms of the formats, it's a regular sort of question I get, Michael, and I'm always very much of the opinion, what would you do to improve the game? It's always the same one. That's the game. I get on with it however it is. Plus, for someone who plays different formats, so obviously play Sky, as you know, I've been playing Telegraph at the moment as well. These games all have different formats and they're all enjoyable to play in their own way. The UEFA game is different. At least it's well organised, unlike the shitty FIFA version from the last World Cup. So, no, I just take the formats as they are, play different formats. I think if you only play one format, then you're more obliged to think, I wish they did this to improve the game. I play games with different formats, so I'm quite happy to take them as they are. John Lloyd says, afternoon, James, what's your current preferred England team and system for Sunday? Kobe Mino will come in the team. Having looked at Slovakia more, and again, if you want to support the show, www.patreon.com/planetfpl. Yeah, do you know what? I'll make it available for everyone. If you sign up to Patreon today, I'll make that advanced tier video. I'll make it available to everyone today. There you go. And tonight's quiz as well. I'll make it available to everybody. Yes, that's a bonus for all the patrons as well. Having looked at Slovakia more, and as discussed yesterday, they might be aggressive on the press, which it won't surprise England because they'll be prepared for it. But it might surprise the average viewer. And ironically, the conclusion I come to on that piece that will be out later is the ability to get Foden and Bellingham either side of Lobotka might work really, really nicely for England, actually. Really might. So system same. I think I discussed this with Clayton on the Patreon pod that we released earlier. I'd probably start Luke Shaw, but I'm not there to gauge how fit he is or he isn't. The argument behind it being start him and change it. Also, I think there's a school of thought I have that Anthony Gordon as a substitute could be a real weapon late in this game. So if you have to take Shaw off and then put Trippier behind him, it will be better for Trippier then to have Gordon in front of him. That's part of the thinking with that. Shaw's clearly not going to do 90 minutes, but it might be you'd get 45 or an hour out of him. You could bring him on as a sub. This was the argument I had with Clay. It's not an argument, but conversation. You could use him as a sub at, say, the 60-minute mark. You say, we'll give him half out at the end. Well, if it goes to extra time, what is it, an hour? Or do you take him off again? So I'd almost rather, if he's ready now that we're hitting the knockouts, is this the sort of game that you could get away with risking it? And there's huge risk there, right? There's risk that he breaks down. There's risk that he's not ready and we get beat. But I think one way or another, we need to try and get him fit. And I'd arguably stick him in, even if it was just the first 45 minutes of the game. Kobe Mino deserves to play. I can't argue against that. I said prior to Slovenia game that I would have wanted Adam Wharton to play. But Mino of the three options, based on what we saw the other night, looked better for Declan Rice. It's worth saying again, we were playing against an opponent that was very happy with their lot. Slovakia will provide different pressure, I think. I imagine Duda will go and press into that area against Kobe Mino. But I also think under that circumstance, Mino's now a better fit for the game than Gallagher in any case. And Trent on this particular opponent, if they do try and press. The 2-8s do like to go and be quite aggressive against other teams' double pivots because Lobotka is the insurance behind that. Their wide players like to press from out to in. So you can, if you're a 6, you could be under duress in that area. So we've got to be careful what we do when we pass into Rice and Mino on Sunday. So Mino would play, certainly. Luke Shaw, for me, I'd take a chance on. Other than that, I think the same team. I think so. I think having looked at it more now, I was more of the opinion that we probably need to change that at the top end. But looked at it a bit more, yeah, I think it's probably the same at the top end of the pitch, I think. But if he picks Gordon or he picks Palmer or anything like this, I don't have a problem with it. These are, I mean, ironically, despite how average we've been, these are great problems to have. Who's next? George Picrablo says, hello, James. Which one do you prefer for this match day, Musiala or Saka? Germany attack looked better until now, but I think Slovakia will play with a higher line than Denmark. Yes, fair. System-wise different as well. Slovakia will play a back four. Denmark, we know, will play with those three centre-backs who we're all familiar with. Saka could have some joy against Hanko. That's for sure. You'd want Saka to push him back aggressively. I do think one of the observations I've made is that England do need to play with one width player. So, although you can't go far wrong with what you pick, I don't think Foden, Bellingham and Palmer as a trio is the right selection for this Sunday specifically. I think one of Saka or Gordon should play. And I think that will probably be Saka. But there's that, isn't it? There is an element of risk that changes. And in seriousness, I think Germany probably score as many goals as England this weekend. So, I mean, for me, I'll be going Musiala. Unless I take him out. But if I did, it wouldn't be for another England player. Nejerd says, hello. If England would swap their defenders from another nation in this Euro tournament, which nation would it be? Or are you happy with what England have showed defensively so far? French, mate. Yeah, I think so. The choice is there. I know Upamecano's not been liked for his work at Bayern, but Deschamps obviously likes him. Has been a mainstay in that team for a long time now. William Saliba is superb. Theo Hernandez would completely solve England's left-back problem. Jules Koundé is, I'm just going to use the word steady as at right back. That's harsh. He's better than that. So I think in terms of backline, I think the French is the strongest in this tournament. So, yes, if I was swapping one, that's the one I would go for. Steve R says, hi, James, hope all is well. Now that you know the draws, pick your final. Also, if England got to the final, which team would you like us to beat the most? Cheers. Like I said, the favoured, with the bookies now, the favoured final is Spain versus England. And that's not just an England bookmaker representative. That's around the world at the moment as well, because of the way the draws worked out. So that's the choice. I've said, I think at the moment, I think if the big hurdle for Spain, I think, will be a quarterfinal with Germany. Otherwise, they're the team that I fancy at this stage. Who would I like England to beat the most in the final? I mean, my instinct to that is to say I couldn't care less. You could look at the romanticism of it being Germany. I was going to say it again, like we were all there in 66. There's probably no one on this stream that remembers watching 66. It might be someone. I think but France as well would be great. Spain, ironically, might even be the best matchup for England, ridiculously, of the bigger nations, just on the one-off game. Portugal felt like it's owed for a very long time, but it's been so long now that people have forgotten about it. Who would I mean, I wouldn't really have a preference. Can I say Georgia? I could say Georgia. This is one I wouldn't be maybe just shitting myself. Mind if Georgia found a way to get there, then they'd probably beat us as well. I know this, and I've been very impressed with Georgia. They've done incredibly well. Yeah, it's probably France, isn't it? I think maybe. But I don't hold any. When I was a kid growing up, like the Germany rivalry was such a thing. It was such a thing in context of Italian 90, 1970, 1966 and the wars, etc. I don't feel any animosity towards Germany, particularly having been there a few times now. There's no animosity towards them at all. France is over the border, but there's no animosity towards them either. So I'm not that fussed. I'm not that fussed, mate. Possibly France because it's the closest. Wayne Jenkins says, hi James, if you had to guess, what do you think will be a big transfer each of the big six will get over the line? Okay. There's a wider conversation about players joining Manchester City at the moment because of what's hanging over their heads. If you're a top player, would you want to join them at the moment? That will sound ridiculous, but can I wait till next summer once we know what's happening with your charges and stuff? I think this might be a problem for City. Arsenal clearly are looking for a forward, we think, but I don't think are desperate for it. I think with Arsenal, it's stronger depth. It's an alternative to... I think for Arsenal, what's the worst thing that could happen for Arsenal? And I think it's Odegaard getting injured. So it's that profile of player, someone that can play alongside him ideally, and also step up in his absence to carry the creative flair of that team. Arsenal are in a position now, though, where they've become strong enough that finding the right ingredient to improve the team like that is tough. You're looking for that profile, that player, and that player's going to be looking over his shoulder and going, am I going to play? Liverpool, again, I've not done enough research on Arne Slot to know exactly what he would want / he's looking for in a type of player. But you would think with the contract situations of Trent, Van Dijk, Salah, that contingency planning may need to be beginning. For Tottenham, Eze would be pretty cool. For Chelsea, anyone that's South American aged under the age of 18. And who have I missed out? Manchester United. I've seen Agate's name mentioned quite a lot today, so let's bottle it, and I'll say that. Greg Frost says, is it finally time for Saka left back, Palmer on the right? Not now. No, the final chance to go with that was on Tuesday night, in my opinion, was the final time. We got Shaw back in full training, and now we're going to do it? No. Now you're coming to the knockout phase where Slovakia will play with wide players who will stick wide and high, by the way. Wrong time. If it was going to happen, it was Tuesday night. That's dead in the water as an idea now, as far as I'm concerned. Joe Pickle says, have you personally enjoyed this tournament compared to other previous World Cups, Euros? Yes, but you are naturally impacted by the team that you support. If they're blessed to be in a tournament, you are very much impacted by what they do as well, I think. I do think that has an impact on you, and I've not enjoyed watching England yet. But I've enjoyed the football. Yeah, I've enjoyed the majority of it. There was a few games in the final round of matches that were a tougher watch, but they also had an air of jeopardy, which I think the first two match days didn't have. So yeah, it's been a good tournament. Football's largely been good. Most of the teams want to play good football, want to do it in a more modern, dynamic, tactical structure. I think you may be surprised. You may even see that from Slovakia on Sunday. So I think even nations like that, Georgia want to play the right way. Turkey have been absent for a while. They want to play the right way. Even the Czechs were really unlucky to go out, played better stuff than I'd seen of them historically. So I think it's a little bit, there's a movement that way now beyond just, and there are more teams who will play with back fives and sit behind the ball in this than you'd get in the Premier League. But the variation of styles is developing. There's more and more nations now believing you can do like an Austria and work to a process and a system that can beat more established opponents if you've got, dare I say it as an Englishman, a more tactical, flexible coach in charge. For Greendale, no problem. You're good, pal. Matthew says, this isn't Sesame Street, no spelling. Yeah, exactly that. Jamie Hayes says, I really liked that 12th manship from the World Cup fantasy game. Beyond that, it was rubbish. I can't even remember it, Jamie. Beyond. Fighter Jet says, hi, James. What do you think of Saka playing left back? He started there for Arsenal and played Palmer. Look, it's something I mentioned. As I've just said, it's finished now. It's not could you do it late in the game if we're chasing? Yes, sure. We're not going to go and start that way now. Right? Now we're hitting the business end. The time for that, I think, is gone. Even if we think about the sort of things that we might have even on this side of the draw, no, I think that moment has gone as far as I'm concerned. As I said, Tuesday was the last chance. But I was pro it as an idea before the tournament. I'd spoken about it, and I completely understand why so many people were against that idea. If Gareth Southgate decided to now try it on Sunday, I'd think that was a bit weird. Now at this stage, I was pro it as a suggestion and an idea for further discussion pre-tournament. I think now, no, move on from it. Aaron Hill says, afternoon, James. Any players that have stood out to you in this tournament you'd realistically like to see Tottenham sign or just have as an FPL asset in general? All the best. There was this lad who came on in matchday 2 for England against Denmark. His name's Ebe Eze. And the links aren't going away. And I can't get out of my head. If he signs, you are going to get it clipped up all over your timelines of me saying he's the most enjoyable player to watch as a neutral in the league. And I said that about Eze about 2 months ago. So I'd love to get him, just from an entertainment perspective. What a joyful player to watch. So yes, from other nations, it's difficult because for Tottenham, I'm looking for real specific profiles of players. Whether he's gettable now that he's kind of been seen on the world stage, I don't know. But I would think if you said to me the most suitable player for Tottenham to sign, I can't have Rodri, can I? Nico Williams at Spain. would be a great asset specifically for this Tottenham player. That is ideal profile of wide player that I think Tottenham should be looking at. So, yeah, you're not going to get your Mal, that's clear, right? So, yeah, Nico Williams at Spain, I think would be a great get. I'm yet to find the player that I want in the 6th position. I'm not sure I've seen it at this tournament. Joe Pickerel says, further to my question, what is your favourite ever international tournament? Favourite ever? I really enjoyed 98. And although England's only got to the last 16, there was plenty of drama in England's 4 games. And it was the first World Cup for me really with England in it, having not qualified for 94. And in 1990, I was only 6. So by that time, 98 was 14. So, that felt like quite a long wait to seeing them really in a World Cup. So I really liked 98. Just the colour of everything in France. You felt like a really good tournament. Ronaldo, etc. The really good Dutch team. Bergkamp's goal against Argentina, etc. Even though he played for the enemy. Even Scotland being a part of that tournament as well. The French's victory. So many. It felt very colourful. France 98. Very colourful. So I think France 98, I think we are often impacted by our childhood. I really enjoyed 2006 as well, despite, again, England underwhelming. I quite enjoyed that. I think the games became quite tense later in the tournament. I remember the group stage of that tournament felt really good to me. And I have to say the last 2 World Cups, despite concerns about where they were in terms of the football, were really good tournaments. But I think for me, from a childhood perspective, I would say France 98, I think. Fighter Jet says, sorry, James, didn't see someone had asked a question. That's no problem. And Sean Cadian can finish with a question that's never been asked to me before. It says, is Planet FPL your full-time job? Yes, it is. I'm very blessed to be doing this as a career. So I never stop working, but I also never feel like I'm working. And if you want to support me in my job and the free content that we provide, etc., please do so, as sold at the start of this stream, at www.patreon.com/Planet FPL, where, yes, all of the Patreon content will be available free of charge for anybody who is a patron at the end of tomorrow. You can support the show at www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Try it at basic tier for a month. If you don't like it, you can go and you still have our love going forwards. Joe Pickle's got one more. Says, what did you make of 2010 South Africa? Oh no, we have to leave it on a sour note. Says, I personally have this nostalgic feeling when watching old highlights like you said about 98 in your childhood. I only got one word to say about 2010 and it's Jabulani. Destroyed the tournament for me. I spent the majority of all the games watching the ball. And you say you watched the ball. No. The flight of the ball. They weren't playing with proper football. Destroyed that tournament for me. And the only team that didn't want to pass it further than 5 yards won that tournament. How ironic. Tom Spain says, hi, James. Where are the clean sheets this game week? I presume you mean in the Euros. Predicted clean sheets from me this week for England, Spain, France, Portugal, Netherlands. There you go. There's 5 from 16 for you. You can't ask me for more. On that note, I hope you all have a great weekend. If you're playing Euro Fantasy, remember to play it your way and the very best of luck. And if your nation is still in the competition, very best of luck in the football, especially if you're English. For the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, man child.